Hey everybody, TacticAngel here, playing some World of Warships Legends on the PlayStation 4, of course, and here to welcome the French into our favorite console naval game with this ship, the Tier 5 light cruiser De Grasse. I know normally I start out with a history of a ship, but this is going to be a pretty short discussion. The De Grasse was laid down in 1939, which didn't give the French a whole lot of time to finish her by the time they surrendered to Germany in 1940. So it was only about a quarter of the way completed when that happened. The version of the De Grasse that we see here is apparently her original intended layout. She was actually completed after the war as an anti-aircraft cruiser and looked quite a bit different than what we see in the game. She went on to serve in the Mediterranean and then during the French atomic bomb tests. The De Grasse is named in honor of Admiral Francois-Joseph Paul Comte de Grasse, who was instrumental in the Battle of Chesapeake, also known as the Battle of the Capes, where the French fleet successfully repelled the British fleet from coming to the aid of the besieged army of General Cornwallis, whose surrender all but spelled the end of the American Revolution. Probably the most interesting thing about the ship, in my opinion, is that it was considered for conversion into an aircraft carrier by the Germans during the occupation of France. The project was cleverly named Aircraft Carrier 2, and should aircraft carriers ever enter World of Warships Legends and they start more openly making paper ships, which arguably this is one of them since you're playing a configuration that never actually exists, then I hope we get Aircraft Carrier 2 sometime, and please don't rename it. And with that little bit of history out of the way, we can go on to talking about this ship and the only commander that you can use with this ship, at least as of the time of making this video. And here I want to start with the commander, André Lemonnier. Here you can see the setup that I'm using for this video, and you can also see I don't have him leveled up very high. He doesn't have a legendary ability active, so this isn't with an amazing amount of skills pumped into him. This is pretty close to low to normal-ish sort of setup. I have Norman Scott because he's kind of the best commander in the game for cruiser captains who like to hit things. But upon playing the De Grasse, I quickly realized that this ship gives you actually a lot of options. And we're going to get into this real quick because the De Grasse is a fast ship, and if you really want to make this a ridiculously fast ship, inspirations like Karl von Müller and or Bruce Fraser would help make this thing a real speed demon. If you did this, you can easily choose Warships, which will make this boat even faster. Considering you're usually going to be using HE, this isn't actually a bad choice, or you can actually go the concealment route. And this is a little bit more weird, specialized if you really want to do it, but I actually do kind of want to play around with it a little bit, and I'll let you know if I have any success with it. As you can see here, Go All Out has a completely broken sea detectability buff, but this combined with Genichi Mikawa or Jersey Sfursky, and the fact that Andre's base trait reduces the time it takes your sea detectability to drop by a considerable percentage, gives you the option really to try to do different things with the De Grasse, and certainly while there's only the one ship in the French line, there's no reason not to spec Andre however you want and just have some fun. Before we talk about ship stats, I will mention I have chosen what I consider to be the two best options for equipment. I mention it because I think they are the best choices by a pretty wide margin. They are Accuracy Mod 1 and Steering Mod 2. This is largely because you're not going to really need a whole lot of extra help with turret rotation under any sort of normal circumstances, and the De Grasse does feel a little unwieldy with its default rudder shift time. Naturally, all of the stats that you see are going to be modified by what I've shown you so far, so now we come to the stats. I feel like this ship is a little hard to compare to other ships in the game, but the ship I think is probably most comparable to it right now is the Nuremberg, because it has good torpedo arcs. Both ships have 3 gun turrets and 3 guns in each of those turrets, and they both have relatively good range. So as we go into survivability, the De Grasse has 31,200 hit points. This is about 4,000 hit points higher than you can expect in the Nuremberg. However, Its armor is only 6mm to 100mm. This means that you are a little bit more susceptible to HE damage. For torpedo protection, 10% reduction if you get hit in the belt. That's not great, but for a cruiser, it's not the worst, and in fact, the Nuremberg is 3% worse. For artillery, you are looking at the De Grasse sporting 3 turrets with 3 152mm guns. They are ranging out to 15.7 kilometers. Obviously, that is influenced by my captain and the skills that I've chosen. They reload every 8 seconds, and they swing around real quick with a 180-degree turn at just 15 seconds. The Grasse is insanely good at starting fires with a 14% fire chance. You are looking at an HE damage of 2200, AP damage of 2465, which is actually kind of low. And then for secondaries, they are rather short-ranged. I mean, this is a cruiser, but they do have a pretty good fire chance. By way of comparison, strangely, the Nuremberg reloads quite a bit faster at 5.8 seconds and does significantly more damage with its AP, but starts fewer fires unless you actually hit with all of those guns. That said, the De Grasse is very accurate, and that is not something that is listed on the screen. As we move on to torpedoes, the ship has one triple launcher on each side. They reload at 90 seconds. They have an impressive range of 9 kilometers, though they only move at 60 knots, which is pretty darn slow. If you do manage to hit something with torpedoes, they do 14,833. This is actually higher than the German torpedoes, and not exactly a bad chunk of damage. That said, the De Grasse torpedo reload is significantly slower, the range is significantly greater, but the Germans have one extra torpedo tube on each side. For AA defense, I understand if you read the Wikipedia, it will tell you that this is an anti-aircraft cruiser. Not in this configuration. The anti-aircraft on this boat is substandard. In fact, it is the second lowest rated anti-aircraft boat for Tier 5 cruisers currently in the game, and it's only behind the Nuremberg based on the range of its long-range AA. That said, none of this actually matters until we get aircraft carriers. For maneuverability, the De Grasse has several things really going for it. First of all, it has a 34.5 knot top speed here, and I should say this is a little bit deceptive. 34.5 is pretty fast for a cruiser. On top of that, the De Grasse also comes with a speed boost, which increases the speed by 15% for 3 minutes. That means if you take my ship configuration out there, you're going to get up to 38 or 39 knots in a straight line. That is destroyer levels of fast. If you decide to go into a speed build with inspirations like Fraser or von Mueller, you're looking at topping out well above 40 knots, which is really impressive, and it's going to really allow you to respond to developments on the battlefield. It's going to allow you to sprint across the board and capture bases in a way that's pretty much unrivaled except by destroyers. In terms of turning, your rudder shift here is still a little bit slower than what you'd see on the Nuremberg, but your turning circle is a little bit tighter. This is actually one of the reasons why I suggest using the Steering Mod Gear 2 equipment. For concealment, you are actually pretty stealthy. You're about a half a kilometer less detectable than a similarly camouflaged Nuremberg. Air detectability is about 7.5. Range of guaranteed acquisition is the standard minimum of 2 kilometers. And finally, you can fire while in smoke and not be detected up to 6 kilometers. So at long last, let's jump into some gameplay. We're on Neighbors. I am, of course, in a De Grasse. That's a force of habit. The battle starts, and as I start thinking about what I want to do, naturally this is not necessarily the best game I've had in this ship, but I feel like it's fairly representative of a lot of the boat's strengths and weaknesses. And I do want to say, in spite of whatever those weaknesses are, I actually really do like this ship quite a bit. So here you see I am moving out to the middle of the map, which I think is a little bit brave. I'm shooting some AP right now at this York. The York is something that I feel like I should be able to pen, and there you see I actually managed to citadel it. Unlike other light cruisers, you do manage to score some citadels against other cruisers in this. I will say I have not had real great luck citadeling battleships with it though. At this point we get up to B and we're contesting this cap, which is an insanely bad idea in a lot of ways, but we are putting some shells down on that at Katsuki, which is meaning he's probably making a slightly worse decision than I am. Obviously we saw a lot of torpedoes go by, so there's a real good chance he doesn't have anything super dangerous to shoot back at me. Unfortunately, I think I'm just about as on fire as I can possibly be. So we go ahead and take care of that. We do manage to sink that enemy destroyer, but in doing so we have really left ourselves out there. We're on fire again because those blasted Royal Navy battleships shoot nothing but the HE all the time, and it makes TacticAngel really sad. We are still in the cap. We're kind of coming to the realization that what we've done here is commonly known as a mistake, but we are being pretty stubborn in terms of actually getting out of it. As you can see there, I have a decent amount of range between my maximum sea detectability when I fire and my sea detectability when I'm not firing. So if you can imagine that getting 15% better, 20% better, even higher if you choose different commanders that actually have concealment perks, you can really see that the De Grasse has a lot of upper end possibilities for actually making something like a stealth build. Now I'm just very carefully sitting inside of the capture area, trying to finish off what I started. Obviously you can see that Fuso out there. He might be the guy who can see me, but at this point I actually don't care all that much because I managed to capture the base, and I'm going to start moving away from all of the things that were making my life terrible. Unfortunately, I'm going to drive right in front of this guy. I kind of have that realization a little late in the game, and he runs right into me. I wish I did have a way of saying sorry, but that's as good as it gets. I'm going to go to the north here and try to capture that particular capture area. You can see there is definitely at least one destroyer up there. Probably just the one because there's only one destroyer left in the game. And we're going up against a Pensacola. Now, you can get spanked pretty bad in this particular boat. I will say I have not been punished to the degree that I have sometimes been punished when using the Pensacola. In spite of being a fast, light French ship, I think the citadel on this thing is a little bit harder to hit than on some other things like what I'm shooting at right now. Obviously, I switch over to the AP a little bit late to, do a lot of damage there, but better late than never. The next set of shells that I put out there hopefully will be a lot more intelligently placed.
We've sunk an enemy destroyer.
In terms of the torpedoes, what you see there is I'm kind of using them for area denial. Really, that's kind of what they're good at. You can also use them as kind of a weapon of last resort. There we finish off the Pensacola.
Enemy cruiser destroyed.
And unlike other light cruisers, I've actually had a lot of luck citadeling other cruisers from all of the other nations, so American, Japanese, and actually German ships. So it looks like we have another De Grasse up there. First thing I'm going to do is immediately shoot this mountain, but after that we're going to actually sail into vision range of the De Grasse. We start putting some shells down there. Here's where you see where the De Grasse can be a little fragile. And so we actually do manage to score a Citadel, several additional hits. I'm going to move into A, and by A I do mean C, and we're going to start to capture this thing. Now I am making kind of a wide turn because one of the things the De Grasse is really pretty good at is going bow on. I am going to sacrifice the additional firepower of my back turret in the thought that this guy's probably going to poke around the side of that island again. I will shoot him with my front 2 turrets, and he will still be at a disadvantage because I think I'm going to have the side of his ship. We don't quite get all the way there, but you can see my evil plan has started. I managed to put 2 really good hits into his citadels, and here we see yet another one. And this is really what I'm talking about. As it turns out, it doesn't really matter how I've angled here because he is shooting HE back at me. I'm shooting the AP. I managed to hit his citadel once again, and we finish out that game. In any case, this is what the De Grasse is really good at. I very much enjoy this ship. There you can see I made a ridiculous amount of money, and on 69,000 damage. Due to our team play there, we've scored over 4,000 base experience with 4 kills. I have to say, after playing this ship, I am pretty excited about the prospect of additional French ships entering the game, and that is a hard thing for me to say. I hope this review has been helpful. Thank you everybody for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.